Kyamoni Buddha Namo Mani Buddha. Namo Shakti Mani Buddha. All right, so we are continuing on the Four Noble Truths, and last week we concluded the second Noble Truth, the truth of our suffering, which we've concluded is our craving, the attachment to craving. So technically, I should be moving into the 12 links of dependent origination, Satchitta Samutpada. I'm going to skip that because that's a very lengthy, in-depth teaching I don't really feel like doing right now. So I'm going to postpone that because each of the truths has its corresponding sub-teachings, right? The very first one, we kind of went over the five aggregates, the 5 skandhas as its sub-teaching. The second truth has the 12 links. And the third truth, as we'll learn today, has another sub-teaching. So I will probably go back to the 12 links after we finish the Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, which is the sub-teaching of the fourth truth. So that will come in time. I'm postponing because I did want to teach it. However, going back to my notes last night, I concluded that it's too obscure, and I have to, lack of better terms, dumb it down just a bit. It's too the way I learn. And it's not as simplistic as I thought it was, so I'm going to have to work on that. But nonetheless, you'll get it eventually, one way or another. I think I've taught it already in the past before, but I will postpone. So anyway, we are on the third Noble Truth, and I will recite the verse from the sutra itself of the Turning of the Wheel to Dharma, which is the Buddha's very first sermon. And when he gets to the third Noble Truth, the Buddha says, Bhikshus, aka monks. There is a noble truth about the cessation of suffering. It is the complete fading away and the cessation of this craving. It's abandonment and relinquishment, getting free from and being independent of it. So the Buddha had already, at this point, highlighted the origin of our suffering, right? Very first Noble Truth was that life is suffering. The second Noble Truth was the origin of where that suffering comes from, which is our craving or the attachment to our cravings and desires. And now we speak on the cessation. Now, during the Buddha's time, the vast majority of religious or spiritual beliefs had to do more or less with revolved around the idea of a true self, of a soul, right? And there's a sutra called the Brahmajala Sutta, which goes through 62 views that were held by these ascetics or these seekers of the time. And they range from a plethora of different views, from the views that the self and the universe is eternal, to using, or that the self is true, and that having every need in your life be fulfilled was truthful, right? A lot of different extremes, right? But most of these views revolved around this idea of self, which the Buddha and us kind of put a standstill to, right? Saying that there is no self-nature necessarily. And so through this, the Buddha called these ideas and these interpretations as unwise attention. That we're giving attention to the wrong thing, right? Which is why there's a lot of practices during the time, and still till this day, right, of asceticism, of extreme asceticism, and thinking that by punishing the body to such extreme measures will release or kind of liberate the self, or liberate the aspects that cause suffering, and to end that cycle of suffering. But then the Buddha says, and this is a quote from the Majjhima Nikaya book of sutras, the Buddha says, this is how he attends unwisely. Was I in the past? Was I not in the past? Was I not in the past? How was I in the past? Having been what did I become in the past? Shall I be in the future? What shall I be in the future? How shall I be in the future? Having been what shall I become? Or else he is inwardly perplexed about the present thus. I am not. What am I? How am I? Where has this being come from? Where will it go? When he attends unwisely in this way, one of 6 views arises in him. The view self exists for me, which is the view no self exists for me. I perceive self with self. I perceive not self with self. It is this self of mine that speaks and feels and experiences here and there the results of good and bad actions. But the self of mine is permanent, everlasting, eternal. The speculative view, bhikshus, is called the thicket of views. Fettered by the fetter of views, an untaught, ordinary person is not freed from birth, aging, death, from sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. That was a long quote. But that is, that's only 2 verses from the sutra. This is verse 7 and 8 from Majjhima Nikaya, chapter 2. So the Buddha is essentially telling us to focus on the right thing, right? Because oftentimes in our practice, we're not really focusing on the correct measures. We're not focusing on what is actually causing us suffering. And this unfocused attention on the wrong thing takes us farther and farther away from the true source of our suffering. And so that quality that needs to be investigated is craving, right? The second noble truth. And craving to have or to be filled with sense data, right? The craving to be, the craving not to be. All these can, as we will surmise eventually, can never bring satisfaction. And though we often, thus far, have not had any, everything sounds very pessimistic in a way, right? Not in a way, it is pretty pessimistic. I'm telling you that life is suffering, and everything that you do is suffering. And you're always going to have suffering regardless, right? This doesn't sound like the best resolution to life, but it's one of those things where it's emphasized because you need to be slapped in the face with dukkha, essentially, right? You get teased by it every once in a while, right? When you stump your toe or someone yells at you or someone cuts you off, you get teased by dukkha all the time. And so it's never a full contact almost. And so you really need to be punched in the face with dukkha, with suffering, in order to say, oh crap, I forgot dukkha exists, right? Because oftentimes we either deny it, or we refuse it, or we have some sort of aversion toward it, right? We never truly, fully establish ourselves in the light of dukkha. But as we start practicing, and as we start to further our development in our practice and in our studies and meditation, we see this a little bit more clearly, and we see all the things that do affect us, all little mundane things, right? All the little talkbacks that we have to ourselves in our minds when we almost bring ourselves down, right? We talk back to ourselves, we talk back to others in our mind. All the little random judgments and denials and jealousy and aversion and likes and dislikes and pleasures and pains, all these things become more apparent as we start to look into them deeply. And one of the ways, and this is the sub-teaching in this path, Noble Truth, is the willingness to make that effort to see those things that cause us to suffer. And one of the maps and one of the lists that we have in Buddhism is the 5 spiritual faculties, or sometimes we'll see them as 5 spiritual powers. But those 5 faculties is faith, in Pali we call saddha. It's faith, it's energy, vidya, mindfulness, sati, concentration, samadhi, and wisdom, prajna. These are the 5 faculties that we use in order to hone our focus, hone our attention onto life's sufferings. And these are kind of the energies that we have to put forth into our practice, right? The very first one is faith, saddha. And this is faith that is also has subcategories, and I'm only going to use 2 of those categories, which is faith in the Dharma, or more specifically in the 3 jewels of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and faith in ourselves. But I must come back to those in a bit. But these faculties, though we call them spiritual faculties because they're there to check our samsaric habits rather than reinforce them, right? Then by applying those faculties, we can start to abolish that craving, start to abolish the clinging, start to let go of those things that cause us suffering, and merge into this freedom that we all desire to have, deathlessness, of nirvana, essentially. And so the first, after faith, we have energy, right? This is an action-oriented type of energy, right? This is the energy that governs where the mind is going. So more specifically, the volition that we have, the intentions that we have. That's the key element to this type of energy. It is the willingness, the ability to want to go through our suffering and face it head on, face to face, in order to remedy it, right? Because if all we're doing is avoiding, if all we're doing is pushing it back and kind of just keeping it there to settle, then we're really not doing anything to abolish it. We're not really doing anything to fix it. We're just hoping it'll fix itself. We're hoping for the best, which hope doesn't do anything, right? Hope is a nice thing, but hope isn't real. It's our ability to make hope concrete, I guess, in a way. But as we start to practice and use this energy, right, then this application of faith and energy then kind of merges with, then we start to develop wisdom, right? And we can apply that wisdom with mindfulness, and this then becomes wise attention, where we can use this to check ourselves and ensure that we're not continuing to fall into the 3 poisons of ignorance, greed, and anger. And we can avoid all the craving that we have. We can avoid the hatred that we have. We can avoid the speculative views that we have. And in our everyday life, we can see this by being more selective about our media input, for instance, right? We're surrounded constantly by media, social media, and all other media forms, and who we associate with, right? We can start to clearly see what does and does not become helpful versus just going with the flow and hoping for the best. But this is also one way that we can keep track or keep in check this craving by essentially making our mind enjoying our here and now experiences and not be bound up by that sensuality, by that identity issues or crisis that we have. And as we start to practice and see the causes of our suffering, then happiness will naturally arise, and especially in our meditation. As we start to meditate more and our meditation becomes more stable and more serene and more calm, right? That will naturally arise and strengthen the first faculty of faith, right? Because we see that what we're doing has an effect. It's doing something, right? You're not just meditating to meditate. You're not just reading to read. You're not just practicing to practice. There's actionable results there, right? And that in itself strengthens faith. And when you have stronger faith, then you have stronger or more energy to want to practice, and your mindfulness strengthens. And then once mindfulness strengthens in meditation, your concentration strengthens, and your samadhi strengthens. And by the buildup of all those faculties, then true wisdom arises, not just knowledge. Because what most of us what most practitioners do is just accumulate knowledge. You read and read and read, and you study. We're not really applying any of that into our everyday life. And it's the not applying that is truly detrimental to the practice, because it's the application of what we have attained, right, through meditation, that's really going to transform that suffering into non-suffering. But of course, this is something that we can force to happen, right? We can't force faith onto yourself, right? It has to arise based on faith in something, right? And that something is, or that faith in something has to also be reliable, which is why I've constantly emphasized our study and practice, right? We have to have both aspects in our practice in order to see the causes of our suffering. And so then this brings faith in the triple gem first in this list, right? In the triple jewels, also called the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Faith in the Buddha, faith in the person who is human and realize suffering and the causes of suffering. Faith in the Dharma and the practices and the teachings that he provided and the roadmaps that we're going through. And in faith in the Sangha, the community of practitioners, right? When you're surrounded by a community, then you can acknowledge or hopefully surmise that I'm here for freedom of mind, for the eradication of my suffering, and so is everyone else that's here, right? There's just think that's group therapy in one way, right? But as we start to practice, we also have to recognize that you're going to learn and attain and practice as much as you personally can, right? We can only go as fast and as deep as our own development will allow. It's not difficult to know in theory what we should let go of and how mindful and wise we should be. But the Buddha tells us that no mind can be what it imagines it should be and what it actually is at the same time. So there's this humbling quality to our practice, this path that we're on, that involves meeting and recognizing our stupid desires and our little habits that don't make sense, and all the grudges that we hang on to that we don't really know that we hang on to, right? It's being able to see all the things that we believe, oh, this is a habit of mine, this is a quality of mine that I should have let go of years ago, right? But it's by meeting those and using the spiritual faculties of faith, energy, mindfulness, concentration, wisdom that will allow us to accept things for what they are versus trying to become something that we're not. Right? This goes back to the second noble truth of the desire to become and the desire to not become. And so the main focus of the third truth is abandonment and relinquishment, as the Buddha had stated. In other words, letting go. Right? And letting go here, the Buddha says, means intimately knowing the pull of craving and abandoning that craving in our own mind. Right? So it's a kind of a psychological place where there's no push, there's no pull, there's no judgment, right? And it offers us a place of having free choice versus doing something by reflex, by just kind of automatic habit. And so in the space of letting go, and letting go of self, and letting go of craving, of our opinions, of our judgments, of our biases, discriminations, of our speculations, all of this, right? There's a quote that I enjoy from Venerable Ajahn Chah, where he says, if you let go a little, you get a little peace. If you let go a lot, you get a lot of peace. If you let go completely, you have complete peace. Right? And so then in another sutra, the Buddha says that the faculty of faith, the five faculties of faith, energy, mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom, when developed and cultivated, have the deathless as their ground, the deathless as their destination, the deathless as their final goal. aka nirvana. Deathlessness means nirvana. The downside of this realization of our craving has puts us in a state, can put us in a state of mind where we believe that everyone else should conform to what we now know, right? Like, oh, I realize what causes my suffering. I realize that this is the cause to everyone's suffering. Why don't other people see it? Why don't you recognize it? Why, Stephanie, do you not grasp the causes of your suffering, right? And so, think of in your workplace, right? When someone has the same job as you, or the same title, or same responsibilities, but they don't really do their work as good as they should, or as good as you believe they should, right? There's that, it's a nice word. Resentment, that they should know what they're doing. They should know how to do this correctly, but they don't, right? And sometimes we fall into that same path in our spiritual practice as well, where we get annoyed with the world because they don't see what we see. They don't acknowledge, they don't recognize the causes of suffering in the way that we have. And this becomes a pain, mostly for us, right? Because trying to get rid of other people's problems has the same contradictory effect in trying to get rid of your own problems, right? Though both aspects of your own pain and other pains is well-intentioned, but what's the word I'm looking for? We often focus too much on the negative aspects of our suffering, right? Or this negative aspects of life in general. And I've said this before, that you're more likely to remember negative or unwholesome or traumatic experiences in life than the good ones, right? And we do that mostly for self-preservation, because we have to remind ourselves, oh, I went through this traumatic event and it made me who I am today, or it made me stronger, or it made me more cautious around certain people, or whatever it may be, right? We make excuses to validate these negative aspects or traumatic events that happen in our life. Though not necessarily wrong, so to speak, but when we hang on to them too tightly and say that, and using them as a crutch almost, then it starts to become unhelpful, because you can't see beyond that, right? You can't see the truth of what had happened, for whatever reason, right? That it just happened. It's in the past, right? But we hang on to the past so tightly that we avoid, or we just refuse to acknowledge that it was the past. It's something that had already happened. It's something that you cannot change, right? And so instead of using it as a support to the relinquishment of that traumatic event or bad experience or negative experience, instead of using it in a actually positive or holistic way, we just use it as an excuse. Oh, I can't do this, or I'm like this because of this happened, right? How many times have we heard someone, oh, it's because I'm an Aquarius that I do this, that I act like this, or whatever horoscope they tell themselves. Oh, I'm like this because this happened to me. I act like this because of that, right? And so sometimes it causes us to, it incapacitates us to really be able to use that dukkha, that suffering, in a positive way. Because if we don't understand dukkha, if we don't understand that suffering, then we can't undo it. And that's really one of the main aspects of our practice, is to undo this dukkha that's causing us to be unenlightened. And as we start to see that more clearly, then that starts to turn our greed and hatred and ignorance into non-greed, non-anger, and non-ignorance. But we have to go through it. We have to experience it. We have to marry it almost. Right? And saying, all right, you're my suffering, you're my dukkha, right? We're going to be together forever. Might as well make use of it, of this bumpy situation or bumpy relationship. And once we start to see that more clearly, and that faith starts to become stronger, we can direct that faith into aspiration, that sense where we can actually get out of dukkha, right? That path of, I don't want to use the word convincing, but the path in recognizing that it is possible. And I can say, you all know it's possible because you're all here, right? Otherwise, you'd be at a bar, or you'd be, doing drugs or something stupid that's unproductive in life. But you recognize suffering, and you recognize that you want to get out of suffering, right? You may not necessarily know just yet the cause of suffering at a deep, intimate level, but you realize you know it, and you've recognized that it's there, and you've recognized that you want to do something about it, right? I'm assuming. And so now you just have to take that energy of wanting to do something about it a little bit further, right? And so you have to strengthen that faith, and that faith in the three jewels then has faith in yourself. And we have to have faith in ourselves, because there's no such thing as blind faith in Buddhism. Blind faith is just blind faith, right? It has no actionable outcome from it. But it is important to have faith in yourself. And you start to have faith in yourself once you see those results. Once you see that you recognize suffering, and that suffering exists, and you want to satiate that suffering, that is faith in yourself. Because you've seen it for your own mind, in your own mind, right? Nobody had to necessarily convince you. Or if you were convinced, it's because your mind did the whole contemplative thing that it does, and realize it for itself, for yourself. So now, what are you going to do about it? Right? If it's there, you know it's there, suffering, and you know that there's a way out, what are you going to do about it? Just going to sit around and hope for the best? Are you going to continue hearing me talk every week? I mean, I know I have a charming personality, but I'm not going to cause you to become enlightened. Continue practicing, exactly. Because you already have, though as far as the five faculties are concerned, or five spiritual faculties are concerned, we practice all of them on a daily basis, right? Because for faith, you have faith in anything you do. When you turn on your car, you have faith that the car will run and take you from point A to point B. You have faith that when you cook raw meats and vegetables and you cook them, that they'll be fully cooked and you have a satisfying meal. You have faith that if you take care of your body and take care of your health and take care of your person, then you'll live a long, healthy life if you want that, right? And so faith is in every little thing, aspect of life. And we have already energy because we wake up in the morning. As much as some of us don't want to get out of bed, you still get out of bed, right? You force that energy to arise, right? And you become mindful, right? The third faculty, and you become mindful all the time. If you're driving, you're practicing defensive driving, right? Hopefully. Or when you're working, you're concentrating on work. Or when you're studying, you're concentrating on your studies. And then we go to the fourth faculty of concentration. And you do that all the time too, right? You're concentrating again. Mindfulness here is just being aware, right? Being aware of what you're doing. Concentration is putting that awareness on just one thing and not multitasking, right? And so mindfulness is driving and knowing that you're driving. Concentration is only focusing on driving, not talking on the phone, not listening to music, not talking to someone else in the car, right? It's the non-multitasking aspect. And then wisdom is something that naturally arises when you learn new things, right? And you do it and you accomplish it and you kind of see it for yourself, whether it's through work or through experimentation or whatever it may be. The result that comes out of it provides wisdom. So these are things that we just do every day. But when we talk about them as spiritual faculties, then it takes us from those faculties from off the cushion to more or less on the cushion, and trying to hone them all in one place versus doing them kind of one at a time in our everyday life. And as we start to utilize those faculties and put them into practice, then slowly but surely, it'll we start to see the causes of our craving, and we start to wanting to abandon them, right? Abandoning and relinquishing is the kind of end goal of this third truth. But don't mistake abandoning or letting go with not wanting, right? Because though we have aspects of our lives that we don't necessarily enjoy or like of ourselves, right? Whether they're negative qualities or unwholesome qualities, not wanting those qualities is still is a craving, right? Which is the second type of craving, is wanting to be or not wanting to be. Maybe you don't want to be a narcissist, I don't know. Or you don't want to be someone that's judgmental or someone that has a lot of discrimination or bias. These are also desires. But when it comes to abandonment and letting go, this kind of shifts our perspective a little bit from a general discriminating to truly seeing in our own mind what it is that we're using to discriminate. What is it that we're discriminating from? Where is this discrimination coming from, right? And so instead of just a blind discrimination or the acknowledgement that we're discriminating, we kind of go inward and dissect that process, seeing where that discrimination comes from. Why do we even have discrimination in the first place, right? What is the cause of it? Who are we discriminating? What are we discriminating? Why are we discriminating? And so by seeing the truth of that, then we start to, instead of not wanting to be someone that discriminates, we can acknowledge all the little aspects that caused it in the first place, and then just simply know, right, that's not what we want, and it'll just naturally let go. It'll naturally abandon it on its own. We don't have to necessarily force it out. Because when you see truth in something, you see the truth. And there's no true effort in trying to convince you of something, right? I can convince you all I want that I just created these flowers from pure air, right? And be like, yeah, I have some spiritual powers that just magically made these flowers bloom. But until you see the planting of the flower, the watering of the flower, the fertilizing of the flower of the seed, and it blooming and arising on its own, then you'll believe that this flower exists from a seed. I don't have to convince you. You've seen it for yourself. But if I just tell you that this flower just came out of nowhere, then it's going to be turns into blind faith versus a true discerning faith. Anyway, I'm off topic. Dang it, we're running out of time. Okay. Questions, concerns, emotional outbursts. No? Yes, ma'am.
If you're trying to see positive things in the world, I don't know if this applies to all the other things that come arise naturally. Is there a certain amount of training you might have to give your brain to see the positive, or you, once you have some kind of aha moment from that, like what? It doesn't have to be just positivity in general.
Mm-hmm.
The questions now, right?
No, that makes sense. It is something that's going to require constant effort, right? To see the positive things in the world in this day and age is quite an effort, right? Because we already know the chaos that's happening right now in the world, right? It's chaotic, it's disgusting, it's hell on earth, right? But there's so much more goodness that's happening in the world than the negatives. There's so much more positive than negative happening in the world, but we just don't see it, right? Because our mind is is stupid. Our mind requires chaos sometimes. It wants to see something that it can fight, that it can disagree with, that it could discriminate or whatever it may be, right? That's unfortunately the evolution of how our mind reacts, right? And so in order to combat that, we have to essentially not force ourselves, but remind ourselves to see the goodness, to see the positivity, right? But that's also what enlightenment is. Enlightenment isn't this world-changing event. Enlightenment is simply seeing the beauty within the chaos, right? To see that there is goodness within the badness, there is color within the black and white, right? So it's the same way that we have the same way that we have many aha moments every once in a while, right? But they're many, right? They're seconds, maybe minutes that they would last, right? But they come and go. It's not consistent. So the same way that we have to work on making it consistent and bringing it forth and extending the time that these aha moments last, from a few seconds to minutes to hours to days to years to permanently, right? The same way we have to work and bringing that same realization up again over and over and over, we also have to do the same thing with seeing the positivity in life over and over and over again, right? Because if you're not bringing it up, if you're not realizing, if you're not discerning positivity, then your mind's just going to see what's immediately in front of you, which is what media is feeding you, what the society is feeding you, what the environment is feeding you, right? Well, if you want to see something other than that, you have to do it. You have to bring it up. You have to change it, right? Otherwise, you're going to be stuck. Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's not added to that. Like, it's not seeing the things positive. It's basically a mindfulness.
Right.
And when we are unmindful, that means we're not mindful. And the reason our mind was towards negative things, like looking at holding on the past negativity, because the mind wants to play games. He wants to play game of victim. Like we want to have a victim mentality. Because the mind wants to take the easy path. He wants to see, oh, I'm going to gain something by doing that. Because parents or nature in billion years, like fight to fight, it has trained the mind, grab this negativity, hold it on, because we fall off, we run on, we are kids, our parents, oh, grab, so we're looking for sympathy, that game, victim game, oh, we're going to fall down and then we're going to hold on, so somebody's going to come help us. Mm-hmm. And that's what the discrimination is. This is not money, it's not anywhere else. Discrimination or any negativity in our brain is feeding us, okay, hold on to this thing because somebody's going to protect us, or everybody's going to protect us, everybody's going to pay attention. Because you just wants attention, self-identity. It helps you with the self that you're talking about. That's the one, right? Because if you hold on to the victim game, victim card, then the self-identity is there. And if nobody paying attention to us if we don't play this discrimination game or victim game, so that's why the negative thing we want to hold on. Mm-hmm. That's the unmindfulness that Buddha this teaches us to be mindful, be aware, not to pay attention on the negative things. These are what we call dukkha, suffering.
Right. There's a lot of emphasis on mindfulness for a reason, right? The unmindful mind tends to hold on to what is immediately happening without discernment, right? Which is why we are ignorant. Ignorance in Buddhism, again, is not seeing things for what they truly are. That's how we live our lives. We are seeing things according to what society is feeding you, according to your own perceptions, your own opinions, your own ideas, your own biases and discriminations and likes and dislikes, and etc., etc. The world is created according to your own mind, according to what your mind is telling you that you're seeing. It's what it's telling you to think, what it's telling you to believe. But that may not be correct. It actually isn't correct. It's a total, complete illusion, right? But because the mind has convinced itself that this is how the world is, that's what you're going to believe. Which is why it's, for a lot of people, it's very difficult to change their beliefs, to change what they believe is true, right? You can show them all the data, all the evidence in the world. It's not going to convince them, because in their mind, they're convinced that this is how it is, when it really isn't. And so that's why it's really important to be mindful of what is happening. Yeah, the world is in chaos, right? But, you know what, I'm going to go there. When your world is in chaos, let's just bring it down to the micro. When your world's in chaos, a typical person, an unmindful person, is going to start blaming, right? It's going to start blaming others. It's going to act like you're the victim here and the world's against you. Well, to be truthful, that's just cause and effect. It's karma, right? It's just going to happen whether you like it to or not. It's going to go against your will whether you want to or not. Things are not going to go your way whether you want it to or not, right? But it's these types of changes or occurrences in life that's actually causing you suffering, right? I said it last time that it's your reaction to things that's causing you suffering. Because you can want and have things all you want. The Buddha is told you that the origin of suffering is craving, right? Your desire for things to be different, your desire for things to go your way, the desire for things to be the way you want them to be. And when they don't, when they go against those expectations, that's when you suffer. And you suffer because you're unmindful that shit's not going to always go the way you want it to go. But if you hold on to that, if you hang on to that so tightly of your expectations, you're never going to be relieved. You will never feel freedom. So the simple act of letting go of your own expectations, of your own desires, will create such a spacious, open mind that will allow things to happen, to just happen. And you accept them for what they are, versus trying to control, right? And that's what we also try to do, is control the environment, control our lives, control the outcome. And it's within that control that's going to bind you to what is happening, and you're going to ignore all the other potential opportunities to help you.
One more thing I want to say, like, when we working or doing something, walking, fall down, and we get up, like, when we get up really bad, sometimes we are bleeding or scratched up, and somebody touches behind us, and we fall down. We're bleeding all over, probably remember falling like cough and everything. Same thing, like if an asteroid hits us, oh yeah, it's something happened. We just kind of like missile hits. Oh, some people are blame everything like this happening because of this guy. So it's just the mind is wired like blaming something, playing the victim game. It's not seeing the things as they are, and that's what the mind is not mindful.
Right. Tell you a stupid story that happened to me just a few days ago when I was at HEB. I'm at HEB and I accidentally ran into somebody. And their reaction was, "You have 4 eyes, you didn't see me?" Of course, after I had me laughing at their face, which I probably shouldn't have. But the reason I ran into them is because I was trying to avoid a child, right? From running into a child. But this person that I ran into blamed me for hitting into them, right? Because they want something to blame. They want a bad guy in their story to make themselves feel better, to make themselves feel important, that how dare someone run into me. Unfortunately, you're not that important to me or to anybody, right? Except for yourself. The only person you're important to is yourself. But that's the kind of unmindful, that's the type of reaction that causes us suffering. It's that unmindful reaction. It's the not knowing of why something happened. You don't know why I bumped into you, right? Because you didn't care to ask, you didn't care to visually see what was happening around me that caused me to stop mid-aisle and you running into me, essentially, because I was avoiding a child. If you were mindful and you looked around and you assessed the situation, then you would recognize what actually happened versus making excuses to justify your own anger that arose, your own dissatisfaction. Right? We've all done that. Okay. Moral of the story, be mindful. Watch your reactions. Next time, just hit the kid, apparently. Which is okay, I don't really... Yes. I'm sorry?
One awareness too much is that being unmindfulness, would that be considered unmindfulness?
It's not necessarily mindful, it's if you're worrying often entails an unknowing of the future, right? And that's going to cause you suffering because you can't predict the future. You don't know what's going to happen. And so we worry and we make up these ideas, these stories, these action plans in our head of if this happened, I'm going to do this. If that happened, I'm going to do this, right? And so we create all these kind of plans in order to combat this worry, to attempt to assuage this worry. But all you're doing is just making up stories and hoping that one of them will align with whatever scenario you've created in mind. But worry is simply just an anxiety of the future, anxiety of the unknown. And there's no reason for that, right?
Doesn't that align with trying to control outcomes?
Exactly.
You're going too far in the future, and part of it's trying to control the outcome.
Exactly. And by doing that, you can, because if your mind is so focused on trying to create scenarios that will combat whatever outcome may happen, that you may miss some opportunities that would have fixed that around you, right? Something could have happened, something may have arose that could have helped your situation, but you're so focused on trying to figure out what scenario will happen in the future that you've missed the opportunity for a present relief versus a future potential relief, right? So whenever worry comes up, especially for me, I just have to remind myself it is what it is. There's no point in trying to worry about something, right? There's no point in trying to control the outcome, because as much as we want to control the outcome or the future, there's no controlling anything, obviously, right? So what's the point? Not, I don't mean to say that in a nihilistic way, but more so to acknowledge that we don't have as much power than we think we do, right? We think we have enough power to control our lives, that we have all the power to make all the decisions that we want in life, right? But unfortunately, the majority of that power is dependent on your external situations, right? And we don't have power over that. You don't have power over your spouse on what they're going to do tomorrow. You don't have power on your own children. You don't have power on what your employer may do. You don't have power on what the teacher may do. But all those combinations is what we try to control. We can't, right? And so you can create all these different scenarios all you want, but every single scenario is going to be dependent on someone else doing or not doing something. Right? So what's the point? We just have to remind ourselves of that. And if we remind ourselves of that, then it's like, well, you know what? It doesn't matter, I guess, really. Whatever happens is going to happen. You don't know the mind of others. You don't know the actions, the thoughts, or the speech they may do. I know it makes us feel defenseless and powerless. But if you truly think about it, that's just how life is, right? Life continued on. It is what it is because of natural selection, for the most part. And so it's going to do what it's going to do. The world is going to do what the world's going to do. The universe is going to do what the universe wants to do, right? Okay.
It's fine. Because being in the present moment is scientifically proven is good for your health and overall health. Just paying attention to yourself. You have to remind it of a single threaded process. You can't do like future and the present at the same time. When you are focused towards too much on the future, then you're not taking care of yourself. You're not taking care of the opportunity or anything around us. So normally, and you don't know about the future is very uncertain. So you're losing your health and everything. Worrisome, just like people losing health, they get cancer, more conditions. In scientific journals, they written again, meditation is so good and it cures the cancers because you are being just being the present moment. You're worrying less.
Right. Okay, now I'm going to force myself to not say anything. We're running out of time. Just think of, all right, I'm going to give myself 2 minutes. Think of anxiety, right? Someone that suffers from anxiety, true anxiety, where medication is necessary. Anxiety is one thing that is 100% preventable, okay? You literally create your own anxiety. You literally you forced your body to create such a mentality of worry that you need an external force, in this case medication, to suppress it, right? But it is one of those things that you've literally created on your own, right? Think of, there's a lot of studies, and it's not conclusive necessarily, but there's a lot of studies, since we all have cancerous cells already living in our body, right? It's already there. The body needs the correct conditions and the causes for that cancer to actually flourish and become true cancer, right? But the seeds of cancers, we all have them. And there are some studies where it shows that through meditative practices, that in some people where those cancerous seeds start to develop because of the stress that their lives had. So stress, anxiety, and I can't think of the third thing, but it was these three factors in combination that allow these cancerous cells to actually start to grow. And through a controlled group that were meditating for, I think it was 9 months, that the growth of those cells start to either slow down or stop. They still became cancerous, unfortunately, but it didn't spread. It's pretty much the conclusion of the study. And so it kind of, to me, it shows like you have all the advantages of becoming enlightened, but we're just not putting in the effort to do it, right? You're not freeing yourselves of the cancer of life. This life itself is a cancer, really, right? But if you put in the work, you have all the potential to stop suffering and to end suffering. Okay, I must literally stop right there. All right, please join me in invoking the Buddha's name 3 times, and then we'll go to chanting. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. For any positive karmic action we've accumulated here today, we wish to transfer the merit to all sentient beings and wish them full alignment. Oh, Shakyamuni. We are going back to the Lotus Sutra. Please go to page 1. Sense in the center now is burning, all the Dharma realm in every place, auspicious clouds appearing, our sincere intention thus fulfilling. As all Buddhas now show their perfect body, homage to the incense cloud canopy, bodhisattva and gray bodhisattvas. Gratitude we offer this incense to all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas throughout space, and may it be fragrant as earth herself, reflecting our careful efforts, our wholehearted mindful, and the fruit of understanding slowly ripening. May we and all beings be companions of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. May we awaken from forgetfulness and realize our true home. To the eternally abiding Buddhas, the supreme Dharma and sagely Sangha throughout the Dharma and the realm of empty space and 3 periods of time. To the fundamental teacher Shakyamuni Buddha, Maitreya, honored future Buddha, Manjushri, great wisdom, Bodhisattva, universal great conduct, Bodhisattva, all Dharma guarding Deva Bodhisattvas and the glorious mountain assembly of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. To Amitabha Buddha in the land of ultimate bliss Avalokiteshvara, great compassion Bodhisattva, great strength Bodhisattva, earth stored great vow Bodhisattva, and the assembly of great pure sea-like Bodhisattvas. Unsurpassed, profound, and wonderful Dharma is difficult to encounter in hundreds of millions of eons. I now see and hear it, receive and uphold, and I vow to fathom the Tathagata's true meaning. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha, Namo Shakyamuni Buddha, Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Pilgrim, briefly in this world I am grateful and joyful to hear the Lotus Sutra. How hard to be born a human again, but I might hope to hear once more the Lotus Sutra. The Buddha moon is hidden, the son of Maitreya not yet arisen in the long night's darkness. In between only the Lotus Sutra sheds its light, the wonderful Dharma of the Lotus Sutra. Whoever copies it, reads it, lives it, they say will be called preacher of the fivefold Dharma. With his 6 roots cleansed in the hand, he who chants the Lotus Sutra is guarded by a heavenly host. He wanders the world without like a lion king. Namo Sadharma Pundarika Sutra, Namo Sadharma Pundarika Sutra, Namo Sadharma Pundarika Sutra. Let's go to page 126, tab 7. Lotus assembly of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Namo Lotus assembly of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Namo Lotus assembly of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. of the Lotus of the Wonderful Law, Chapter 23, the former affairs of the Bodhisattva Medicine King at the time. Bodhisattva Consolation King Flower spoke to the Buddha, say, world-honored one, how does the Bodhisattva Medicine King come and go in the Saha world, world-honored? This Bodhisattva Medicine King has carried out some hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, millions of nayutas of difficult practice, arduous practices, very well, world-honored one. Could I ask you to explain a little the heavenly beings, dragons, gods, yakshas, gandharvas, asuras, garudas, kimnaras, mahoragas, human and non-human beings, and the bodhisattvas who have come from other lands, and the multitude of voice hearers will all be delighted to hear. At the time the Buddha addressed the Bodhisattva Consolation King Flower, saying, many kalpas in the past, immeasurable as Jen. A Buddha named Sun Moon, pure bright virtue, thus come one worthy of offerings of right and universal knowledge, perfect clarity in conduct, well done, understanding the world, unexcelled word, trainer of people, teacher of heavenly and human beings, Buddha, world-honored one. This Buddha had 80 million great bodhisattvas and mahasattvas, and a great voice hearers equal to the sands of 72 Ganges. This Buddha's lifespan was 42,000 kalpas, and the lifespan of the bodhisattvas was the same in this. There were no distinction of genders, hell dwellers, hungry spirits, visa or asuras, and no kinds of suffering. The ground was as level as the palm of a made of lapis lazuli, and adorned with jeweled trees, jeweled curtains covered it, hung down in jeweled urns, and incense burners filled the land. Everywhere there were platforms made of the 7 treasures, with a tree by each platform, the tree situate an arrow shot length from the platform. These jeweled trees, sattvas and voice hearers sitting under them, and each of the jewel platforms had hundreds of millions of beings playing on heavenly instruments and singing the praises of the Buddha as an offering at the time, for the sake of the Bodhisattva, gladly seen by all living beings, and the other numerous bodhisattvas and multitude of voice hearers. The Buddha preached the Lotus Sutra. This Bodhisattva, gladly seen by all living beings, delighted in carrying out difficult practices in the midst of the law preached by the Buddha. Sun Moon, pure bright virtue, he applied himself diligent about here and there, single-mindedly seeking Buddhahood for a period of fully 12,000 years. After that he was able to gain the samadhi in which one can manage all physical forms. Having gained the samadhi, his heart was filled with great joy, and he thought to himself, by gaining the samadhi in which I can manage all physical forms is due entirely to the fact that I heard the Lotus Sutra. I must now make an offering to the Buddha, Sun Moon, pure by virtue, and to the Lotus Sutra. Immediately he entered the samadhi, and in the midst of the sky rained down Mandarava flowers, gray Mandarava flower, and finely ground hard black particles of sandalwood. They filled the whole sky like clouds as they came raining down. He also rained the Buddhas of the sandalwood that grows by the southern seashore. 6 taels of this incense is worth as much as a saho. All these he used as an offering to the Buddha. When he had finished making this offering, he rose from his seat and bowed to him. Though I have employed my supernatural powers to make this offering to the Buddha, as good as making an offering of my own body. Thereupon he swallowed various perfumes, sandalwood, kunda, koda, trushaka, pika, hollows, and liquid amber gum. And he also drank the fragrant oil of champaka and other kinds of flowers, doing this for a period of fully 1200. Anointing his body with the fragrant oil, he appeared before the Buddha. Sun, moon, pure, bright virtue, wrapped his body in heavenly jewel rose, poured fragrant oil over his head, and calling on his transcendental powers, set fire to his body. The glow shone forth, illumined worlds equal in number to the sands of 80 million Ganges. The Buddhas in these worlds simultaneously spoke out in praise, saying, excellent, excellent, good man, this is true diligence, this is what is called a true dharma. Thus come on, the one may use flowers, incense, necklaces, incense for burning, powdered incense, paste incense, heavenly silk and banners and canopy, along with the incense of the sandalwood that grows by the southern seashore, presenting offerings of all such things as these he can never match. The one may make donations of his realm and cities, his wife and children. He is no match for this good man. This is called the foremost donation of among all donations. This is most highly prized, for one is offering the Dharma to the thus come one. After they had spoken these words, they each fell silent. The body of the Bodhisattva burned for 1200 years, and with the period of time had passed, it is itself out. After the Bodhisattva, gladly seen by all living beings, had made this Dharma offering, and his life had come to an end. He was reborn in the land of the Buddha. Sun, moon, pure, bright virtue, in the household of the king, pure virtue, sitting in cross-legged position. He was suddenly born by transformation, and at once for the benefit of his father spoke in verse form, saying, great king, you should now understand this. Having walked about in a certain place, I immediately gained the samadhi that allows me to manifest all physical forms. I have carried out my endeavors with great diligence and cast aside the body. Yeah, I recited this verse. He said to his father, the Buddha, sun, moon, pure, bright virtue is still present at this time. Previously I made an offering to this Buddha and Geta Dharani that allows me to understand the words of all living beings. Moreover, I have heard this lotus suit with its 100,000, 10,000 millions of Nayutas, Kankaras, Vivadas, Akshobhyas of verses. Great king, I must now once more make an offer to this Buddha. Having said this, he seated himself on a platform made of the 7 treasures, rose up into the air to the height of 7 tall trees, and proceeding to the place where the Buddha was, bowed his head. Observant to the Buddha's feet, put his nails of his 10 fingers together, and spoke this verse in praise of the Buddha. The countenance so rare and wonderful, its bright beams illuminating the 10 directions. At a previous time I made an offering, and now once more I draw near at the time after the Bodhisattva, gladly seen by all living beings, has spoken this verse. He said to the Buddha, world-honored one is the world-honored one, still present in the world at the time. The Buddha, sun, moon, pure, bright virtue, said to the Bodhisattva, gladly seen by all living beings, good man, the time has come for my nirvana, the time has come for extinction. Buddha, sun, moon, pure by virtue, having given the Bodhisattva gladly seen by living beings at night in the last watch of the night entered nirvana. Please go to page 171. Tab 9. Bodhisattva Avalokita while moving in the course of Prajnaparamita shed light on the five skandhas and found them equally empty. After this penetration, he overcame ill-being. Listen, Shariputra, form is emptiness, emptiness. Form is not other than emptiness, emptiness is not other than form. The same is true with feelings, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. Listen, Shariputra, all dharmas are marked in emptiness. They are neither produced nor destroyed, neither defiled nor immaculate, neither increasing nor decreasing. Therefore, in emptiness there is neither form nor feelings, nor perception, nor mental formations, nor consciousness, no eye or ear or nose or tongue or body or mind, no form, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no object of mind, no realms of elements, interdependent origins, and no extinction of them, no ill-being, no cause of ill-being, no end of ill-being, and no path, no understanding, no attainment, because there is no attainment. The Bodhisattvas grounded in Prajnaparamita find no obstacles for their having no obstacles. They overcome fear, liberating themselves forever from illusion and realizing perfect nirvana. All Buddhas in the past, present, and future arrive at Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. Therefore, one should know that perfect is the highest mantra, the unequaled mantra, the destroyer of ill-being, the incorruptible truth. The mantra of Prajnaparamita should therefore be proclaimed. Gate, gate, para, gate, para, sam, gate, bodhi, swaha, gate, gate, para, gate, para, sam, gate, bodhi, swaha, gate, gate, para, gate, para, sam, gate, bodhi, swaha. Jinn beings are limitless. I vow to liberate them. Afflictions are endless. I vow to eradicate them. Teachings are infinite. I vow to learn them. Buddhahood is supreme. I vow to attain. I vow that from now until the end of my life and in all future lives until I attain Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, that I will help all sentient beings in all realms of existence and their suffering. Namo, let us come one worthy of all. The proper and universal knowledge, perfect in understanding and conduct, skillful in leaving the world through liberation, perfect and complete understanding of all worldly dharma, unsurpassed, night taming hero, teacher of gods and people, Buddha, the world honored one. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha, Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Bodhisattva Namo Kshitigarbha Bodhisattva Namo Kshitigarbha Bodhisattva Namo Manjushri Bodhisattva Namo Manjushri Bodhisattva Namo Manjushri Bodhisattva Namo Samantabhadra Bodhisattva Namo Samantabhadra Bodhisattva Namo Sattva Namo Maitreya Bodhisattva Namo Maitreya Bodhisattva Namo Maitreya Bodhisattva Namo Great Pure Sea like Bodhisattvas Namo Great Pure Sea like Bodhisattvas Namo Great Pure Sea like Bodhisattvas Namo Deva guarding Bodhisattvas Namo Deva guarding Bodhisattvas Namo Deva guarding Bodhisattvas. Take refuge in the Buddha, the one who shows me the way in this life. I take refuge in the Dharma, the way of understanding and of I take refuge in the Sangha, the community that lives in harmony and awareness. Laying in the refuge of Buddha, I clearly see the path of light and beauty, and though dwelling in the refuge of Dharma, I learn to open many doors on the path of transformation. Dwelling in the refuge of Sangha, shining light thus supports me, keeping my practice free of obstruction. Taking refuge in the Buddha, in myself I aspire to help all people recognize their own awakened nature, realizing the mind of love, taking refuge in the Dharma. In myself I aspire to help all people fully master the ways of practice and walk together on the path of liberation, taking refuge in the Sangha. In myself I aspire to help all people, fourfold communities, to embrace all beings and support their transformation. Citing the sutras, practicing the way of practice, Without limits, we vow to share the fruits with all beings. We vow to offer tribute to parents, teachers, friends, and numerous beings who give guidance and support along the path. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. It's a quick announcement that next week's service will be a non-regular service. We recently had a couple taking refuge, the 3 refuge and 5 precepts. Unfortunately, Miss Stephanie was absent due to illness, so we're making up that ceremony for her on next Sunday. So next Sunday we'll be doing a special service to transmit to her the 3 refuge and 5 precepts. So I invite everyone to please join us for that special occasion and congratulate and wish and spread well wishes for enlightenment for Stephanie next weekend. Thank you. Namo Shakyamuni.